Hello, everyone. My name is Ahmet Kükrek, and I'm an assistant professor at Centenary University, and I will be actually sharing my journey with online learning. My journey with online learning actually started before Corona. I was already exploring the live lecture capabilities through Microsoft Teams in the fall semester of 2019, as one of my lectures actually had to be canceled due to snow day. And knowing that in the spring semester we are going to have more snow days coming, I was already exploring these live lecture capabilities. And so once we were told to move our courses online during the pandemic in 2020 spring, March, organic chemistry class on Teams had already been created by March 11, 2020. And by adapting asynchronous teaching, my students actually tuned into my online live lectures with more than 96% attendance, as you can see from this graph. And as far as the lab concerns, I was using actually the lab as rest stations because we didn't have any preparation for the labs. So I was just doing practice questions during the lab time to help the students. So after about like 6 weeks of this craziness, where we mostly improvise, right? Then the semester ended, and then we had a chance to ask students to what they learned about this online learning and what was their experiences. So my spring 2020 course evaluation had extensive student comments on both ends of the spectrum regarding the course. So instead of showing every single student comments, I thought that showing a word cloud will be actually more meaningful and fun. And so here is the word cloud that I get. And as we can see, connecting the dots is not so difficult. Being an already difficult class, organic chemistry is one of the hardest classes for science majors. Students complain that it's actually even harder to learn online. And that's where I started to adapt my own online teaching. If you look at my traditional on-ground lecture, uh, I have actually more a question and answer approach in my pedagogical style. This way of teaching actually keeps my student focused and attentive throughout the class session. And I found this actually the way of teaching very effective. However, I have my doubts about this approach in the live online meetings, as the communication with the students can be a challenge. So that's why I've been actually exploring some active learning methods that might actually work better in online settings, such as polling and games. However, I did not find it very practical and helpful for the following reasons. Because polling works best for short answers, right? However, organic chemistry is all about critical thinking. It requires students to think abstractly while using the analytical skills and problem-solving techniques. And also, while I was experimenting with the Kahoot for polling, I realized that actually it takes quite a bit of time for preparation. Not only that, once your poll is ready, it takes quite a bit of time to launch the poll, wait for students to answer, and if there's a kind of like a delay, the connection delay, it costs you some time actually, and that's what I realized. I'm losing a lecture time. And finally, polling works better for a larger classroom. Since I have actually a class size of less than 30, I actually decided to go back to my classical question and answer approach in the fall of 2020. So what I did was I was constantly asking questions during my lectures, live lectures. If I don't hear an answer, I was actually calling them by name and keep them engaged and encouraging them to ask questions as well. And the second thing that I did was I also got a Microsoft Whiteboard and Wacom tablet. In fall 2019, I was just using my iPad with my Apple Pen, and I was just actually doing an annotation on my PowerPoints. However, as soon as I start using the whiteboard, it gave me actually an extra space for drawing these colorful molecules. And so my drawing on the whiteboard were very visually appealing and easy to follow for my students. And also Microsoft Whiteboard has some other cool features where you can actually, as soon as you finish your lecture, you can actually get the export of this drawing. You can even like post on the Teams, or you can just send an email to all the students. And if you're asking what about the labs, as far as the lab, the Centenary University actually gave our students an option to choose to attend the lab in person or online. And so what I did was I actually paired the on-ground students with the remote ones. And so the on-ground students kind of like acted like a teaching assistant in a way. So if I can give you an example here, the on-ground students are doing actually a micro distillation of tertiary butyl chloride. And then while they're actually explaining what they are doing to the online students. And even though the online students weren't doing the experiments per se, there were a lot of exchange in the breakout room, right? On-ground students were actually giving all the data point that they have. And if the online students didn't understand something, they were asking questions. So in this way, they were not only learning organic chemistry, but also their communication and collaboration skill is actually improved as well. One last thing that I want to mention about this is the breakout chat feature allows an early intervention, because unlike the Zoom call, whenever you create the breakout room, even after you finish the call, students actually can come back to breakout room, and they can actually ask questions if they want to. They can still, again, exchange their data point, etc. And in this picture, I'm not sure if you can read it, again, while the students are actually having this conversation in the breakout room, since you are the owner of this breakout room, you are seeing the conversation in real time. And if the students are actually having difficulties, you may have a chance to, again, do an early intervention and just answer their questions right away. So again, at the end of the fall 2020, we actually ask our students, again, what do they think about these new methods? And my students actually found this newly adapted style very helpful, like the approach, and most importantly, they understand. They actually saying that you're understanding topics. That's what the bottom line is. And so in my last or so slides, I just want to make a comparison between the Microsoft Teams and Zooms, because I've been actually experimenting with Zooms for other colleges as well. And so I think the one of the most important feature is all the recorded content are accessible on the same platform, unlike Zoom. So if I can give you an example here, right, this is one of the slides where I talk about aromaticity. And so whenever they log into Teams, right, whenever they launch their Teams app, it's a platform, they can actually see the video right away, right? You don't have to go to another platform to be able to watch the videos and recording. And again, unlike Zoom calls, right, once you created the breakout rooms, it allows our students to actually interact with each other. Yeah, even in the lecture time, if they don't have any, if they don't understand questions, they can actually still ask questions. And in the lab, again, they can actually exchange their data points and etc. And when we started, actually, when I started using Microsoft Teams in the in spring 2020, the breakout room wasn't actually ready, right? The way that we understand. And so they released the breakout room feature in fall 2020. And again, thank God we had the breakout room. Otherwise, I wouldn't be able to run my labs with my own ground students and online students. And I heard that actually they are still working on the polls, the way that we understand, just like the way we understand from the Zoom polls. And I think this could be a great feature, especially if you have a larger classroom, larger than like 30 or 40 or 50. And again, most importantly, right, all these features that I'm talking about is free, right? As long as your school is associated with the Microsoft Teams product, then Teams is one of the apps that they are offering. So you can actually use and utilize all these features without paying a dime. So in closing, if we can summarize, again, Microsoft Teams is a viable option. And even though Zoom has some cool feature, but sometimes the school doesn't have money to afford all the Zoom features, especially like recordings, right? If you don't have a Zoom cloud account, then you have to do the recording by yourself, and then you have to upload those recordings to learning management systems. And as we can see, there's a lot of work. But if you have the Microsoft Teams, the Teams is actually doing everything by yourself. And as soon as you stop recording it, the lecture is going to be ready on the platform in a couple of minutes or so. And again, I think this is one of the most highlighted the thing that I learned, sometimes whenever we actually adapt, right, especially with the technology, we think that some of the classical techniques that we use is not going to work, right? However, I found it actually wrong because, especially again, depending on the class size as well, if you have a smaller class size, smaller class size, my question and answer approach in my pedagogical style, initially I thought that it will never work in the online settings. However, it worked quite well actually with the technology. And again, for organic chemistry, again, if you're thinking about polling, I found it actually it's not very useful because you're, again, it requires a lot of time to prepare, and the polling works best for short answers. However, in organic chemistry, there's not short answers, right? We want to learn about whys, right? Why that carbocation is more stable. So it's not just yes and no questions. So for that reason, especially again for a smaller size, smaller class size, question and answer approach works better than polling. And again, finally, considering the teaching one of the most difficult course for our science majors, my organic chemistry student survey mean improved from 4.08 to 4.18. Again, it's not a lot, but it improved comparing to last year. And students' comments confirm that I helped them to learn a very hard subject. And thank you so much for listening to my presentation. And if you have any questions or if you want to do a collaboration, here's my email address. Thank you and have a wonderful day.